Hi everyone, Lisa Gillespie, craniosacral therapist and restorative exercise specialist. Today I wanted to talk with you about breathing, and we're going to talk about 3 different types of breathing and how they may be a benefit and how they may not serve you as well as you would like to be served, and also what you can do to help retrain your breathing. So 3 types of breathing. We have 3 types because oxygen is obviously really super important for life, and it's good to have backup systems in case one way is not working for us. It's good to have backup plans in place when it comes to oxygen and taking air in. So we have belly breathing, where the abdomen, the belly moves in and out. It's typically what we think of as the ideal way to breathe. It's what we think of as the way to breathe when we're trying to relax or calm ourselves down. We also have another way of breathing called scalenic breathing, which emphasizes the scalene muscles, which are these muscles that come down through your neck on either side. They also tend to be notoriously tight on a lot of people who hold tension in their neck. This type of breathing also can involve some other muscles like the traps, your trapezius muscle, and your levator scapula muscle. In short, when we scalenic breathe, I'm going to show you here, you'll notice the clavicles or your collarbones moving up and down in response to the breathing. So you can watch right here. And you can see the clavicles moving up and down. Well, what happens with that is these muscles in the neck are helping to elevate the rib cage in order to create more space for oxygen to flow in. So we have to, in order to get air in, we have to change the pressure within the chest cavity. So we have to create more space to drop the pressure to allow the air to flow in. And we do that by either expanding the abdomen, by elevating the rib cage up and down using these muscles in the neck, which, as you might imagine, is going to create some long-term tension patterns. Or I should say, it's going to create tension patterns. Whether or not they're long-term is up to you and the habits that you have. Ideally, if you're having problems with holding tension in your neck, if you're having aches and pains in your neck, and if you want to preserve the health of your neck, then scalenic breathing is not something that you want to do on a regular basis. It's great if you have to run to catch a plane and you're gasping for air. You want to be able to get as much air in as possible, and scalenic breathing might come in handy for you at that time. The third way of breathing, and what I consider to be optimal under ideal circumstances, is torsional breathing, which is when the ribs move up and down to increase the space or the circumference in our rib cage, which then creates more space, which allows the air, drops the pressure, allows air and oxygen to flow in. Torsional rib breathing, however, depends upon having mobility in the ribs so that the ribs are able to move up and down. Kind of like if you think of, I'm looking at the blinds that I have in my office, that the traditional horizontal vinyl blinds that you turn and the little slats open up. That's what I imagine when I talk about torsional rib breathing. It also, the other benefit of this is that when we breathe using the rib cage or the ribs in this manner, we widen the ribs, which spreads the diaphragm out, and we decrease the pressure that the diaphragm puts on the abdominal cavity or contents of the abdomen, which then decreases the amount of pressure that the organs place on the pelvic floor. So the more the diaphragm drops down, the more pressure is put on the pelvic floor. When we breathe with the torsional rib breathing technique, we widen the diaphragm, and we decrease the amount of pressure that is put on the pelvic floor as a result of our breathing. And since we breathe all day long, it's nice to minimize as much as possible that downward constant pressure or ongoing pressure of the pelvic floor. So, and one other thing, the torsional rib breathing is also a great way to help maintain bone density in your ribs. Ribs are one of the top 4 areas where we're most likely to have decreased bone density or osteoporosis, the precursor being osteopenia. How do we maintain bone density? Well, loads to the bone, force applied to the bone, is part of what stimulates your body to know how dense those bones need to be. What puts force on our ribs? The muscles, these intercostal muscles especially. You've got muscles that run in between the ribs, the bones of the ribs. So when we breathe using this torsional rib pattern, we are using those intercostal muscles. So they're pulling on the rib above and below them, which then creates more load to the rib, which signals the bone, hey, we need to be dense enough to support this amount of force, and that's how we optimize bone density in that area. Or that's one of the ways to optimize bone density in that area. So, now that you know how fabulous torsional breathing is, let's talk about some ways that you can restore it, because you're probably, excuse me, you're probably not used to doing that. First thing you can do is just put your hands underneath the breasts, around the rib cage, and breathe in, imagining that your whole rib cage is widening. The whole entire circumference, side to side, front to back, is expanding when you inhale. And you can feel that. And you may have noticed when I did that, I also had my clavicles go up. So what you want to do ideally is not expand from the belly and not elevate the clavicles while you're doing this, but just allow the ribs to expand. All right? And putting a little bit of pressure, a little bit of compression between your hands helps give a tactile cue to your brain to make that brain-body connection, because those muscles, those intercostal muscles, most likely for the vast majority of people, haven't been used a lot. So they're really deconditioned, and we've got to work to wake them up and get them back on board. So that's one way to do that. Another way is if you have a TheraBand, a resistance band, a low resistance, don't use a super high resistance, or the best possible use you could have for pantyhose, if you have an old pair of pantyhose or a new pair of pantyhose that you're not going to be using any longer because yuck pantyhose, you can tie this around the rib cage, and again, it's another tactile cue to use to help signal your brain, oh, this is the resistance that I want to expand my ribs into, and then relax as I exhale. So you can play with wearing that around the house and practice your breathing. You can wear it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but this is a really nice way to help restore your connection to your intercostal muscles, to help condition your intercostal muscles, and to help get you back on track with being able to utilize torsional rib breathing and reap the benefits of that. So enjoy and have fun practicing.